Today I will talk about one of my most favorite crypto projects out there.
Muchas gracias, afición. Este es para vosotros.
Right now, SUI is the largest non-EVM blockchain besides Solana. The TVL is going bonkers and it doesn't show signs of stopping. And price 5x in the last 3 months alone. It's all about direct digital ownership delivered with the utmost security, accessibility, and creativity in a super future-proof way. Spoiler alert, the tech behind SUI is ingenious, but also kind of complicated. But as always, I will explain it to you in a simple way. Bear with me, we will look at everything around the project, the tokenomics, technical analysis and price predictions, all the important data prepared and packaged, ready for you to digest. Coming up, in this episode of Phil Prince, your one and only stop for crypto, finance and trading, with me, you will gain the skill set and the mindset to crush the markets. Before we start, also make sure to follow me on Instagram. I just created an account. Same as on YouTube, it's Phil Prince Crypto. There's very informative short form content coming up here on Instagram. Please stay tuned. Same on Twitter. There my username is philprince_11. And here you can look out for very short term updates. Both are linked on my channel as well. Let's make some noise for the algorithm. And here on YouTube, if you're not subscribed yet, do it now. You really don't want to miss the next videos. Let's get to it. With this project, I really don't know where to start, so I will just hop into goals and features, and then from there we will dive into the technology part. In short, I would say they prepare for mass adoption in a really future-oriented way that even makes sense in a couple of years' time. And for that, they're simplifying the interaction with the blockchain. So their most important feature is the zkLogin, and that basically allows you to create and use a crypto wallet with your social media accounts in a few clicks. So you could, for example, log in with Google, Twitch, Facebook, Microsoft, and there are much more options to come. So in turn, this means your Google account, for example, manages your wallet. And at first glance, this sounds really bad. But SUI did it in a very smart and kind of crypto-conform way. As they claim, you still have all the benefits of self-custody. And it's an instant onboarding for dApps with users that don't know nothing about crypto at the moment. Also, they say zkLogin can be implemented alongside existing account types, such as mnemonic and hardware wallet. If we're looking a bit at the technical side of things, you can see the user is interacting with an app that integrated zkLogin. Then the user is selecting an OAuth provider. This is, for example, Google, Facebook, or whatever. This will link your account. But at the same time, there's a so-called salt service incorporated in creating the wallet. And a salt in cryptography is basically random data. And it's an additional input, like in our example, to a one-way function that hashes data, passwords, or passphrases. And that helps against possible attacks. This means there's no way that your wallet is solely connected to your Google account and can do transactions or something. For that, it would need the external salt from the salt service. And also they're saying here, the apps can use a salt service, as pictured here, or request the user to provide a salt. So that will lean more into the self-custody. Also, in their documentation, they clearly state the OAuth provider cannot transact on the user's behalf. Sending a transaction requires both a credential from a recent OAuth login and a salt not managed by the OAuth provider, as I explained. An attacker who compromises an OAuth account cannot transact from the user's corresponding SUI address unless they separately compromise the salt. Also, zero knowledge proof, and that's why it's called zkLogin. Prevent third parties from linking a SUI address with its corresponding OAuth identifier. So from the outside, it's not even possible to know, okay, this SUI wallet has to do something with this Google account. So at this point, it kind of sounds like they have the perfect solution to bring ease of use and self-custody together. But bear in mind, I don't think it's possible to be as secure as self-custody. So it's a bit of a trade-off for sure. Also, you can see here they have multiple other OAuth providers under review, for example, Amazon and WeChat. And also it's really easy for developers to integrate into their apps as there's a specialized SDK ready. The second functionality that is based on zkLogin is zkSend. And at the moment it's still in beta, but the team behind SUI Mysten Labs is already giving us some insights. And they have a very nice video, which I'm gonna show you. So basically it allows you to send funds without the recipient having a wallet. So you log in with the zkLogin, then you select the amount of SUI you want to send. and then it creates a link for you. And then you can basically copy the link and send it with Telegram, for example, or email, doesn't matter. Now the cool thing is, if the recipient doesn't claim his SUI, you are able to reclaim them and put it back in your wallet. So that's great news, I would say. As you can see, this also provides for mass adoption, and I'm sure that SUI will be launching multiple functions going into this direction in the future, all building on top of each other. Now for the technology part. I know I already became a bit technical, but now we're deep diving into the blockchain part, if you could call it a blockchain. As a small spoiler alert, they do basically everything different to most projects, or you could say they took the best out of everything. That's for you to decide. But what's pretty sure is that SUI is coming after Solana, the same way SUI does, which I already talked about. And I don't know if this is coincidental, SUI and SUI, because as far as I know, they are not affiliated in any way. In their documentation, they actually say it's pronounced SUI, which is derived from Japanese and means the element of water, which explains the water drop logo and also many other references in their technology. And actually the smallest fractions of SUI are called Myst. So the same way Bitcoin has Satoshis as its smallest fraction. Then one of the most important parts of the technology is that as a consensus mechanism, SUI uses delegated proof of stake, which is a variation from the normal proof of stake. As you know, basically all of the new projects use proof of stake in contrast to proof of work, which was used in Bitcoin. One exception is Casper, which I talked about in my last video, and uses proof of work as well. So delegated proof of stake is actually one way to handle the blockchain trilemma, which I discussed in depth in my video about Casper. But in short, every blockchain tries to achieve optimal levels of decentralization, security, and scalability simultaneously. And usually the developers have to make some trade-offs and can only truly achieve two of these three benefits. Now, delegated proof of stake adds to the security part, as it has to do something with the mechanism how the validators are chosen, which is in a democratic way. Also, it helps the validators to do their work in the most effective and cost-efficient way possible, which helps with scalability. Now for SUI, there's basically a fixed set of validators. And these validators, in case you don't know, are responsible for validating new transactions and maintaining the security of the blockchain. And they do this by staking SUI. In order to become a validator on SUI Network, you have to have a SUI validator node, so basically a server. And on top of that, you have to have a minimum of 30 million SUI in your staking pool, meaning more than $50 million at the time of recording, as SUI is sitting at $1.70. And after that, they are able to request to join the validator set. Speaking about the decentralization part of the blockchain trilemma, SUI is not too decentral at the moment, as the validators were handpicked from the team. And these were 100 validators from the beginning, so there were only 6 validators that came on top afterwards. But at least are spread around the world, as you can see here with these blue dots, and they are residing in 12 countries. The issue with having such a low validator count is that the network is more vulnerable to a so-called 51% attack. This means that if more than half of all the validators, they could basically take over the network, like pirates. In order to improve the decentralization again and counteract this low validator count, SUI operates using 2000 full nodes. These store the full blockchain, meaning the full transaction history of the blockchain, in contrast to the validators who only store the present state of the network, which is sufficient data for them to validate new transactions. In order to further increase the scalability part, SUI is able to process transactions in parallel and not sequentially, meaning one by one, what most blockchains do. This is due to SUI being a block DAG, similar to Casper. DAG stands for Directed Acyclic Graph. So something like that. There is nodes and edges, and these edges connect the nodes in a directed way without allowing for cycles or loops. I explained this in depth in my DAG primer in my Casper video, so go ahead and watch it there. It'll really make you understand how this works and what benefits it brings over a normal blockchain. Now, what's really interesting for SUI is that they are differentiating transactions into two categories, simple and complex. A simple transaction, so basically if you're just sending a coin from one account to the other, the consensus process is basically skipped, making the validation almost instant. consent. More complex transactions, on the other hand, are processed by their technologies Narwhal and Bullshark, another reference to the water naming. Narwhal is the mempool of SUI, which is also DAG based. For reference, a mempool is basically the queue where the transactions wait to be processed. Now, a Narwhal is very good at identifying which transactions are simple and complex and therefore need consensus or not. If they do need it, it'll be passed into Bullshark, which is the consensus engine. This enables basically infinite scaling and therefore pretty constant gas fees, which SUI advertises with this chart, where you can see that the transactions are rising, but the average gas fee is staying constant, which is a big contrast to Ethereum, where the gas fees go bonkers if there's a lot of congestion on the blockchain. Another big difference to other blockchains is that SUI revolves around an object model. In most cases, storage, for example for dApps, is centered around an account, meaning a wallet. But for SUI, the storage is centered all around objects that have unique IDs and are addressable on chain. This means that every smart contract on SUI, which is by the way called a SUI move package, is an object and manipulates other objects on the SUI network. These other objects are basically sets of data or hierarchies of more objects, which the packages, the smart contracts or the dynamic code, can read from or write into. So what this means in turn is that SUI makes it possible to store data directly on chain, similar to ICP, Internet Computer. Already made a video about that. For example, NFTs can be stored completely on the SUI network. You don't need an off-chain service to store the metadata, like on Ethereum or Solana. Also, it's possible to delete these objects from the network afterwards. But bear in mind, this is just possible for the normal objects and not for the packages, or the smart contract, so to speak. Now, and to write these packages, SUI, and how could it be any different, uses a special programming language, which is called Move. So Move is open source. It's not invented by SUI, but Move on SUI contains some important differences from Move on other blockchains, which mostly have to do with the object model. For reference, Move is based on Rust, and Rust is used, for example, on Solana, Polygon, and some other blockchains, and is famous for its scalability. Ethereum, on the other hand, uses Solidity. Another feature on SUI is sponsored transactions, and this allows a SUI address to pay the gas fees for a transaction to another address. So basically a dApp can take over the gas fees in advance for every address that communicates with it, and that is with gas fees being ridiculously low on SUI anyways. Then there's SUI Kiosk, which is a decentralized system for commerce applications on SUI. Kiosks, of course, are objects as well. Everyone could create a kiosk and list assets for sale. The owner retains ownership of these assets to the moment of purchase and can set custom policies for the sale. Whoa, well, this is the longest technology review part of any video I made so far, and the craziest thing, I'm not even through. They're doing plenty of research on top. For example, Hammerhead, the leader reputation for dynamic scheduling, or Cuddlefish, the expressive fast-path blockchains with fast unlock. I could go on and on. SUI is packed with technology. Let me know down in the comment section which one is your favorite. Now, before I talk about the ecosystem and most importantly the tokenomics, stay tuned for this, they have a very nice approach. I need to talk about the roots of SUI and its team, because this is nothing ordinary. You might have heard of Facebook Libra, which has been an attempt by Facebook to create its own blockchain and cryptocurrency. Later, when Facebook migrated to Meta, the project was renamed to Meta DM. At the end, this didn't work out. But guess what? The team members split up in two groups, and from that, the blockchains Aptos and SUI emerged. By the way, let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see a dedicated video about Aptos. So now, all in all, this means SUI has its roots in Facebook, which is crazy to think about. I mean, I would not have guessed that from a project like Libra, which was really mediocre and flopped in the end, we would get such an innovative and technology-packed project. And it's just one of two. Now, for the 5 co-founding members, you can see these are the best of the best. They've been at Meta, Apple, Oracle, they've been to UCL, Cambridge, and so on. Then there's a growing ecosystem with, at the moment, 85 projects and also multiple NFTs. There's a lot of DeFi products like Scallop, where you can do everything from lending to swapping and bridging. Please let me know down in the comment section if you'd like to hear about some specific projects out of the SUI ecosystem. SUI even has its very own official NFT project, which is called SUI Friends, and features these super cute characters named by some of their technologies I presented to you, like Narwhal and Bullshark. Now, for tokenomics. Definitely make sure to watch this till the very end. They feature a very interesting token mechanism. The first thing we will look at is cross-chain activity. And as you can see here, in the last 90 days, the outflows from Ethereum were the biggest with 32%, and this mostly went into SUI with 58% of these outflows, which is nearly double that of Solana. This really speaks for itself and shows for the massive interest in this network. For the total value locked, we are sitting at $572 million, which is very good. Also, you can see the incline over time is very, very gradual. It's no wild ups and downs. The investors basically come and stay. Also, if we overlay the price development, you can see there's a very nice correlation. And it also shows us that there is a lot of room to grow here. If we compare it to Solana, Solana is sitting at the moment at 1.9 billion. And before the last bull cycle, before it picked up steam, this was basically right here. It was sitting at around 780 million. And if we can expect something similar for SUI, it'll go bonkers, and Solana actually hit 9.9 billion in total value locked at its highest point. Also, the amount of core developers is staying around the same, and there's always a lot of commits going on, which is not surprising for a project that technology driven. Next is investment rounds, and this should give you a glimpse at how promising this project seemed from the very beginning to institutional investors, at least. In Series A, which was at the end of 2021, institutions that already were investing were Samsung, Andreessen Horowitz from A16Z, one of the biggest VCs, and also some other VCs. And they got around 36 million, and then in Series B, it was again Andreessen Horowitz, then already Coinbase, Circle, which issues USDC, Binance, and FTX. Well, FTX should not give us an indication. This was 300 million. Then they had a couple of IEOs on Bitforex, OKEx, KuCoin, and then the most recent one last year, May, on Bybit. Then SUI is sitting at around 1.9 billion in market cap, with the fully diluted market cap sitting at 16.5 billion, which is quite a difference and is due to token unlocks as always. So let's have a look at what we've got. First, I like the allocation very much. There's community reserves for the first 3 years with 8.7%, and then another 27% for 57 years after that. Investors got 14% and early contributors 21%, which is on the upper end, I would say. Then the team Mysten Labs has 12%, and there is some other smaller positions. So the team got unlocked half a year in, which normally is too early in my opinion, but this is basically a treasury, so I guess they use this for development as well. Then the investors and early contributors are starting to unlock 1 year in, which is very healthy and normal. Then I really like this community reserves idea for the first 3 years, and then just after that the rest. So looking at that, it's quite okay. But then in the chart view, we can see this enormous cliff popping out like the Mount Everest. So that's pretty interesting. It's very gradual, then it goes boop, and then it's very gradual again for the rest of the unlocks till the very, very end. Also, this cliff increases supply by around 60-70% in 1 day, and will happen in May this year. Also, what's funny is that it's just around a week after the Bitcoin halving, and as this has to be met with demand, this might be an explanation why SUI pushes his project so much at the moment and makes for this amazing price rally we have seen. Also, it seems to me that this is mostly institutional driven, because if we have a look at the daily active addresses, they are staying pretty much the same since end of last year, which basically would mean, if this data is correct at least, that we have the same addresses pumping money into the project. Also, this cliff mostly consists of investors and early contributors capital, and as Andreessen Horowitz or A16Z got to buy SUI at $3 and the other VCs got to buy it at $10, it wouldn't be too far-fetched if they sell some of the funds. Also, SUI has much more partnerships going, for example with Alibaba Cloud. They will provide node services and validator infrastructure for testnet developers. Also, they partnered with BitGo for digital asset management. But that's not just a simple partnership. Basically, SUI chose BitGo as custodian of the SUI token it maintains as its community reserve. And if you remember, the community reserves are 8.7% and 27.4% respectively. So together more than 35% of the whole SUI supply. If something would happen to BitGo, this would basically destroy SUI. So that's something to keep in mind. Now for the tokenomics flow, the most interesting part of SUI's tokenomics. They did a very good job here, and I will explain to you in a minute why this provides potential for SUI to become deflationary, similar to Ethereum. Speaking about token utility, you have the usual things going on. You can stake it, there's gas fees, and you have governance voting rights. If a user is to store data on SUI, which, as I explained, happens through objects and will cost a transaction fee. Some of these fees get burned, which is a deflationary mechanism, but another part of these fees goes into a fund. This fund will never be removed, meaning it will accumulate more and more SUI, but these will be staked again on the network, and the rewards which come out will be used to pay the delegators and validators. So basically you have a burn and lock mechanism at the same time. So once again, to make it really clear, transaction fees from the users will be to a part burned, meaning destroyed, and to a part locked forever. And the staking rewards of the funds will be then used again to pay validators and delegators. It's a very nice concept and not too different from ICP, Internet Computer, which also burns tokens through users storing data. I explained this in my video about ICP. So that's what could make SUI deflationary. But that's a scenario for the future, as SUI at the moment just has around 13% of tokens in circulation and is pretty inflationary. Now that we carved our way through everything that's behind SUI, let's have a look at the price chart. As you can see, we are holding above the 200 EMA since October 2023. Like most altcoins, and we have around a 4.5x to the very top at the moment. We're now getting a small correction like all the altcoins. I mean, this is nothing out of the ordinary at the moment. We had very high funding rates which are resetting right now. Also, technical analysis wise, we hit the 1.618, so it's normal to have a small correction. Actually, I shortly talked about SUI in my second video on this channel, and this was when price was around here at $1.30, here for reference. And there I said that I am looking to accumulate more SUI and that I started to buy SUI for the first time when it was at around 46 cent. So after this correction, if we don't get any surprises, I would look at the 2.618, which sits at $2.58 as a next price target. If we go in fact deeper below the EMA 200, for example, that's still, as I said in my second video, a very nice opportunity to scoop up more. For the long-term price prediction, let's compare it to Solana. As I said multiple times on the video, is a Solana competitor, and its programming language builds on the programming language that is used by Sol. So the current market cap of Sol will bring us to $38 approximately, so 23x, and to the all-time high it would be around 40x, meaning more than $66 for SUI. Meaning this will be our projected target area for this bull cycle. Over the course of the next months, we will see how likely that is, and we can adapt accordingly. For another target that is very, very likely to hit, we can just use the Fibonacci tool and draw it up, and this gives us the 2.618 here, meaning between $19 and $25. Let me know down in the comment section which scenario you think is more likely. Referring back to the beginning of the video where I said SUI brings together all the best from other projects, you can see we have a block DAG instead of a blockchain like with Casper, but on top they have their own mechanism to differentiate between simple and complex transactions. Then they allow for data storage and use it to burn tokens, which is similar to ICP, Internet Computer, with the potential deflationary scenario. On top, they build their very own object model that distances itself a bit from the accounts, the wallets, and uses objects for smart contracts and for static data. And on top, they sprinkle mass adoption features like zkLogin and zkSend. Also, if you remember, I talked about SUI's namesake, SUI, which also claims to be a Solana competitor and is more decentralized than SUI. So I really advise you to watch my video about SUI right now. There I talk about everything you have to know about it, also how they approach the blockchain trilemma. Trust me, it's really worth it. At the moment, it's the most clicked video on my channel, which should speak for itself. As always, this was not financial advice. Please always do your own research and due diligence. This was Phil Prince for you. Crush the markets. Until next time, goodbye.